What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 78 of the Around the Crease podcast. This week, I have Wagner assistant coach Marc Zolchonock, and he's here to talk about recruiting. We answer a lot of the questions that you guys had before, kind of expand on some of the ones that I asked with Coach Trey Wilkes a few weeks ago, and just kind of dig a little bit deeper into the recruiting process to help you guys out. So let's get started. Before we head into this week's podcast, if you like high school lacrosse content, you want more podcasts like this or more videos like this where we kind of dig into the recruiting process, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment below letting me know what questions that you have about the high school recruiting process or just the recruiting process in general. Can be anything, and I'll try to ask them in a future podcast with a college coach. But now, on to this week's show. I am here with Wagner College Defensive Coordinator, Coach Marc Zolchonock. We're going to talk a little bit this week about the recruiting process, kind of break it down, section by section to see, hopefully get some of the kids' questions. I got a lot of questions on Instagram a few weeks ago. Kids were asking, so some of these are the ones that those kids asked. So, Coach, thank you so much for being on the podcast. First time speaking with you. I really appreciate you making time.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and I'm ready to provide some answers to some of your questions and kind of connect some dots for student athletes out there and some parents.
Yeah, that'd be great. And speaking of connecting dots, like a few weeks ago, I put kind of out on Twitter, like what were people's number one question about the recruiting process, and a little bit to my surprise, like usually it's how you get noticed by a college coach, but I think with the growth of so many events over the last 5 to 10 years that has now become the concern, which I think is kind of tied in with how to get noticed. But it's like how should players go about, parents go about picking which events to attend? Like, how do you kind of see that process playing out?
I see this as, I'm going to attack this one a little bit differently, because I believe that we live in a social media era where there's a lot of information that's on our phones right away.
Yeah.
A lot of these events will post what schools have been there or are going there. So researching these events, seeing which schools are going to be there, are these schools of interest to you, and seeing if it's an event that you can get seen by the handful of schools that you're interested in to maximize your time and money. As well as what is the format of the showcase that you're going to. Are you just going there to play games with a group of kids that you've never played before? Or is there a coaching segment for 30, 45 minutes, an hour to where you're going to get some skills and drills and hear a different voice from a coach that you don't normally work with, get some more hands-on time in that aspect to really expand the experience of what you're going to. Yeah. And then you can also fine-tune it by your region. You can look in your region and go, I'm willing to travel 3 hours for a showcase. What's going on near me? Because the bottom line of all this is time and money as far as all these events. There's so many events, and everything does cost money, and you want to maximize what you're doing and what you're asking of your parents, because the last thing I always say to a group of kids that I get the opportunity to work with is, hey, first thing when you see your parents, when you walk off this field, if they ask you, how do you think you played? Don't answer that question right away. I want you to tell them, thank you for being here today and taking me to this event. I had a lot of fun. And then go into how your day went on the field.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And I mean, I think one of the things that you mentioned kind of right at the start is kind of looking at the colleges. And I think part of that goes into just kind of knowing doing some research from the players and the parents' perspective on like where they might want to attend. Like if you have no interest in a Notre Dame or a Maryland or a place like that, maybe the event that, going to, if those are the predominantly kind of schools that are there, maybe that's not the event that you want to pick. So, I mean, I think there's probably something from the players and parents' perspective of just, don't just maybe always pick which event has the most college coaches, but maybe pick the ones that have the right college coaches, the ones that you're interested in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's events that will have 75 to 100 coaches at it, where you're getting a lot of eyes on you. But then there's also events that I've got to that are more that boutique style, that are 10 to 12 coaches. That's more these are the schools that are going to be here. Do you have interest in these schools? This can maximize your time and be seen by these schools going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure every event would love to be the National High School Lacrosse Showcase, where I think they listed 195 coaches. I mean, but reality, not every event is like that. So, I guess you're gonna have to either pick if you're not lucky enough to be in that event. But yeah, that's generally the number one question I get. But you kind of touched a little bit on how, like, we kind of tweaked the question instead of getting noticed, but more like how do players kind of get evaluated by coaches?
How players get evaluated, I kind of broke this down in the three categories about on the field.
Mm-hmm.
Your number one, your athleticism is going to stand out first and foremost. How big, how fast, how strong you are. That's very easy for us to notice right away.
Mm-hmm.
The second category that we like to break it down to is guys that play with a motor. And what that entails is, are you playing as hard at 8 a.m. and at 3 p.m. in the afternoon after you've played a couple games? Do you still bring that same energy to the table that your game is consistent along the entire day? We understand that days are long. We get tired sitting in chairs on turf. It's hot. We got to drink a lot of water. But if you're able to make me go, wow, this kid's playing hard, and it's 4:54 in the afternoon, we're like, wow, there's something there. And the third category, that how do we evaluate players, is plays made. Whether that's visible plays on the field or the invisible types. And what I mean by that is the visible types are kind of the obvious ones.
Mm-hmm.
Scoring, assisting, winning faceoffs, playing the ball well on defense. And then the invisible plays that we like to talk about is your stick work and moving the ball. Are you using both hands? How well do you set up your dodge? Drawing slides and moving the ball. Communicating. Can we hear you from the sideline? And are you saying the right things? What are your slide decisions like? And how well do you pick up the ground balls? Those invisible plays make up a lot more, in my opinion, than the visible plays.
Yeah.
And that's almost 10 different ways for you to get evaluated in a showcase or tournament setting. And kind of one story I want to add in there. This is another way to get noticed and evaluated in the off-field setting. This was about 2 years ago at a tournament that I was helping run. So after every game, I'm on the radio. Hey, to all of our field managers. Hey, can we make sure all the teams pick up their bottles and Gatorades off the field once they're done? Less work for us at the end of the day, right?
Right.
So we can just take the nets off, collapse the bow nets, and go home instead of trying to pick up trash. I make this announcement, and I'm sitting at a field, and there's bottles everywhere. And then I guess the kid hears the announcement from the walkie-talkie, and there's houses all around this field that this tournament's at.
Okay.
I see this kid just start walking towards this house. I'm sitting there, I'm like, this is a little weird. What's this kid doing? Knocks on the door, has a conversation with the lady who lives in the house. A couple of minutes later, he's coming back with a garbage bag. He fills the garbage bag with all the bottles that couldn't make it into the trash. So he went above and beyond the expectation of, oh, the trash is full, like there's nothing left for me to do. He took the next step of, I'll just go get another garbage bag and I'm going to make something happen. We noticed that, a couple coaches I was sitting with, as much as his play on the field.
Mm-hmm.
So it just adds to what we look at these events. So we notice the big things all the way down to the little things as well.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of a story. Coach Torpy at High Point a couple years ago, he was telling me, he was like, I guess he always looked for things like, as the recruit is, he's sitting up in the front seat while his mom's like crammed up in the back. I always remember that quote because he was like, because it kind of drives home the point, like coaches are watching even when you think they're not watching, like those moments where like that had nothing to do with lacrosse, but obviously it got yours and your coaching staff's attention. And sometimes that's all it takes. Like you need that moment, like, maybe you didn't play the best that day, but if there's something that makes a coach take a second look, in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the little things like that. Like even as going as far as when we're at these showcases and we have the opportunity to work with a different group of young guys for three different games. We notice the kids who ask us questions every time they come off the field versus the kids who don't ask any questions. We're lacrosse coaches. I don't teach physics. I can teach you how to play lacrosse. So ask us these questions at these sidelines, and we take notice of stuff like that. That is like as well as like the little things on the sideline. Like, are you crowding the box, or are you making sure that everyone's getting the same amount of run in the midfield? Because in that setting, it's just go straight down the line. If you're the next guy up, you go. And we also notice if guys are cutting guys off in the line. Let everyone play. Everyone's going to play the same amount. We're going to rotate guys equally. But are you being a good teammate in those situations? We take exceptional notice to things like that.
Yeah. I want to go back to one thing you mentioned, because you mentioned, seeing the kids, how they're playing at 4. Like, does there ever come a time where, like, maybe you see a kid, say 8 a.m., fresh off a good night's sleep and whatnot, and you notice him? Do you guys ever go back and be like, I want to see how he's playing during that last game of the day?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the recruiting process as a whole is a multiple evaluation process. We want to see a couple times, whether that's twice at an event or maybe the following weekend, maybe from the beginning of the summer, we'll see in the middle, see at the end. We'll go back and rewatch a kid to see what he's doing later on in the day. Was it just a flash in the pan, or is he a consistent player that brings the same qualities to the field every single time? Because consistency at the college level is probably at the utmost importance of what you're doing on your day-to-day basis as far as attacking your days.
Yeah. Okay. And kind of merging in with that, and like for a lot of the kids that are basically not on the East Coast, a lot of the questions I get is, does the getting noticed or evaluated, is it any different for kids that are not on the East Coast, like maybe a kid in the Midwest or West, or some of the locations where it's not considered the hotbed?
In my opinion, I'm going to say the answer is unfortunately yes, but I'm gonna lay everything out there so there's kind of a clear picture of what I see. I think as far as getting noticed, I don't think there's any difference. Whether you're from the West Coast, Midwest, Southeast, if you stand out on a field and we're there, we're gonna notice you. If it's a situation that requires we want to see you play again, that's where there's a little bit of a difference. We're gonna see the same kids locally a lot throughout the summer, where most of these events on the East Coast are made up of your New Jersey, Long Island, Philly, Baltimore teams, where there might be a splash of a team from one of those areas where we get to see them for that opportunity. And taking advantage of, if a coach reaches out he wants to be able to see you again, how you follow up with that. Sending your highlight tape, and sending your game schedule, but also finding out where they're going to be going forward is a big piece of the process. And as you communicate with the schools, having candid communication with them. Where do I stand with you guys? To lead to, like, maybe they really want to see you one last time, and maybe that opportunity is a prospect day. If I play well, are we going to take that next step? Because, again, it is time and money, but that honest communication with the coaches and being mature enough to ask those questions goes a long way for those non-traditional areas as far as taking next steps and getting evaluated a couple times throughout the process, so we truly get to know you on and off the field.
Yeah. And just to kind of clarify, obviously the contact with coaches, that would only come after September 1st of a player's junior year. So, for a player that, before that period, because I know the rules have changed here recently, for a player that's not at that point where you guys can't reach back to them, like, what things could they be doing to make sure, like, if they're in, I'm a player, I'm interested in Wagner. I was at an event and I played with you guys. Like, I might not know if you guys are interested in that point, but, maybe I've done my research and I'm like, hey, that's a place I want to go. But you guys can't tell them anything. What should a player like that do to make sure they're at least on the radar, or, put themselves in the best position to know you guys know who they are?
I mean, the biggest way, whether it's before September 1st or after September 1st in the junior year, is that self-interest process. Well, we can't reach out to the kids before September 1st. They still have the ability to send emails. The only thing we could obviously send back is camp information, but we take notice of who sends us emails, and we put a big effort into going to see the guys who are self-interest, to see them play, and being at those events to get those evaluations. And then after that September 1st date, another big piece of the puzzle is those coaches' recommendations. One of my buddies is a coach down south. He's in my ear about his kids, and it's another added evaluation, getting to know you, that helps the recruiting process from a non-traditional area to get seen multiple times.
Yeah. So I guess the kid can always talk to his travel coach, high school coach, and have them be their mouthpiece. If they're, I mean, obviously, you guys know, and I know over my years, like the high school coaches, they're not gonna lie to you about a kid because it's their reputation on the line too. So a kid's not, coach isn't gonna recommend, because then you're not gonna go back to that coach. So like I know there's people out there that might think otherwise, but like, oh, my kid wants to go to Wagner, so the coach should get him in there. But the coach has his reputation. Like, you're not going to keep talking to a kid's coach if he keeps, blowing smoke up your butt about his players, kind of thing. It's your job to recruit the best and help you guys win. So I think that was fantastic for both September 1st and before September 1st players.
Yeah, I mean, if I want to kind of wrap that up into two probably biggest points of that entire kind of, I was almost a little bit of a tangent, is being proactive in what you're doing with your emails, then being able to have those candid conversations to maximize what you're trying to do in search of the right fit for you and getting seen. I think those are the two biggest pieces that go a long way in the non-traditional process.
Yeah. And again, this kind of intentionally kind of all ties in together. But how early should a player start trying to get the attention of a college coach?
I would say before the rising junior year to get on some radars. With these new rules, which I think they're fantastic, enjoy your freshman and sophomore year. Have zero pressure about trying to think about what college that you want to go to. Enjoy high school, enjoy sports as a whole, and maybe do one prospect camp that's local, just to hear a different voice coaching you, have a little bit different experience outside the guys that you normally play with, but don't have to go crazy by what so means. Just try to do things to get you better. Play in the backyard, and then around that time of your rising junior year, start putting yourself out there with sending some emails and get on some radar of some colleges that you might be interested in.
All right. Yeah, that's perfect. So what, I know we talked a lot about the on-the-field stuff, but what are some non-athletic factors that factor heavily into the recruiting process from your guys' perspective?
I would say probably at the top of our list is grades. We want to know that you're a good student in the classroom. What you do in the classroom translates to what you're going to do on the field. And with grades, that you're trending upwards in school. Let's say a kid let's call it an average freshman year. Might be a C+, B- type of student. That he doesn't stay that same way as a 14-year-old than he is as a 17, 18-year-old. His grades might be a C+, B-, but if he's if he's a junior and his grades are B+, A-, we see the maturity factor has risen as you've grown up and you've understood the task management in the classroom. That's probably related to how well you've gotten better as a lacrosse player. Yeah. So trending upwards is a big thing that we like to look for.
All right. I mean, that's got to be, like, I know I've talked with previous coaches in the past, including my usual co-host, Michael Ward, like, the D1 lacrosse is in some, D1 sports in some respects is almost like your full-time job. Like, it's what is it? cheap fast, or I forget, I'm going to draw a blank on the thing. It's like you can have two out of the three. It's like you're probably not going to be able to join a frat, play lacrosse, and go to school. Like you have to sacrifice something. So, being able to improve in the classroom and time management is a skill that I think, I think even adults can learn. It's one of those things like learning how to manage your time and how to make time for everything and continually improve in those areas is an important skill that really you never stop learning for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to kind of touch on a few more things, I said it just previously, your ability to communicate and have a conversation. And how you learn how to do that is normally when you're about to talk to a college coach, it's probably a scheduled phone call. Hey, we're going to talk at Tuesday at 7:30. Be in a relaxed setting. Be ready to have that phone call, do a little research, have some questions ready. So it's a fluid conversation back and forth rather than we're getting a one-word answer and it feels like we're talking to you. We don't want to talk to you. We want to get to know you and have a candid conversation that has some back and forth and some flow to a conversation. And then something else after that would be, like I said at the very start, your social media accounts. What is your bio say? What is your username? What is your default picture? If your account is private, we obviously really can't look too much into that. But if it's public, what are you posting? What are your captions? Your social media gives us a snapshot of how you present yourself to your family, your friends, and the outside world. So if that's how you put yourself out there to the public, we want to see that side too. So that's something that we look into. And then sort of athletic, but it's not lacrosse related, is do you play multiple sports? Do you have an ability to pick up multiple things in different areas playing sports that you haven't peaked out your athletic potential in the lacrosse field? So that's probably my 4 non-athletic factors that I would feature heavily in recruiting.
Yeah, I want to expand a little bit on the multi-sport thing because I think I've been hearing a lot about it. I hear about it a lot all the time, but I think there was that article that came out not too long ago from, I think it was the Atlantic or the New Yorker, I forget which one, but it was kind of talking about the decrease in athletic participation, but some of that may have been because of the specialization in some sports, like I think football and basketball. Like, so the numbers don't look as much because the kids, those kids that used to play football in the fall, basketball in the winter, and then maybe lacrosse or track and field in the spring, they're football from the moment. And why? But lacrosse is, I say, fairly unique because I've covered all 3 of the major sports like football, baseball, and basketball. And lacrosse seems to be really the only one for the most part that I hear almost all the coaches be like, we want you to play other sports. Every other sport is almost like, if you're going football, you're football. Like, you got to train for it. Why do you think the multi-sport athlete is so valued or treasured in the sport of lacrosse?
I want to say it's more valued and treasured because of untapped potential. What you might not be dedicating full year round to one thing means you don't know how to do everything yet. So we have the ability as college coaches who do this full time, 365, that we can take you to where we think that you can go that much further because you haven't played lacrosse year round every single day, that you've gone onto the football field, you put on a football helmet, and you ran some routes. Well, now I like to relate things to other sports. So if I'm coaching you how to dodge, well, how do you run a post route? You probably cut off one foot, cut off the other, and cut to the inside. It's the same way as a split dodge. So being able to relate things to multiple sports, I think for us as lacrosse coaches is a big piece of the puzzle. Or talking more defensively, if I'm talking about how we're going to play at goal line extended and how we're going to use our hands, it's probably very similar to how a D lineman's going to use his hands and get that punch out and drive with his hands, but also using his feet to get around the tackles. Yeah. So I like to use sports as examples, so for kids to be able to understand that because they're just not lacrosse only guys. I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, That's great. And I think also, from probably the physical perspective is like you don't suffer those repetitive injuries quite as, from what I understand. Like I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, so please don't take anything I say verbatim. But I hear like those repetitive sports injuries. I mean tennis elbow, things like that. You hear because it's just used over and over and over again. Like I think those get decreased when you play some other sports and use your different muscle groups. Even though you might be using your legs, you're using them in a different way than doing the same thing over and over. Practicing that split dodge all the time, eventually you'll probably get injured. But if you do some different things, like you'll strengthen your body all around, reduce the amount of injuries, hopefully anyway.
Yeah, to that point, you kind of just reminded me. I'm pretty sure it's Jim Harbaugh quoted, "The body craves contact." So you're going to get a lot of different kind of body contact in different sports to learn how to maneuver your way in different positions. The way your body's going to get contacted in lacrosse is going to be different than football. It's going to be different than basketball. It's going to be different than if you play hockey. So being able to learn how your body operates and have a sense of yourself and the athlete that you are playing different sports plays a big piece in the body wanting that contact and thriving in those moments of pressure, of being under control.
Yeah. And I mean, I've remember talking to a bunch of kids from Minnesota years ago, and then recently they're I always spout how valuable playing hockey was to their lacrosse career. Like they said, they learned so much about playing, about like how they play in lacrosse by their skills that they learned on the ice. So, and I mean, I've heard that. I remember I mentioned in an earlier podcast, Justin Shockey said he thought he was so good at the face-off because I think it was either whitewater rafting or kayaking in high school, and he was really good at it. But he was like, oh, those little movements for your forearms really help strengthen them up, and he felt that was really the kind of key in him being able to pick up the face-off so quickly and dominate at it. So it's like, wasn't necessarily, obviously he practiced a lot at the face-off, but it was those other sports that helped him kind of hone those skills in ways that other kids may not have or may not experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that relating 100%.
Yeah. So one of the questions that I got, this was a kid off Instagram had asked, is being a walk-on at a Division I school, is that a thing? Like, is that something that happens?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. At both of my previous stops, I've seen it happen. So we're talking at the Power 5 level, down to the mid-major level. But with walking on, your process is going to be a little bit different. You have to be able to move the needle for the program. You just can't be a guy at the back end of the roster. You got to follow kind of that middle ground or higher to be able to walk on successfully, and that goes on and off the field. The first kind of contact that you're going to have about that walk-on process, while as all the guys on the team probably got their physicals done over the summer, all their sports med paperwork has been taken care of, your first point of contact in this walk-on process is probably that sports med hurdle. When classes start, they put out a flyer of lacrosse tryouts or walk-on dates is going to be in a week and a half. Well, you have a week and a half to now get your sports medicine paperwork done and get yourself cleared to be able to give yourself that opportunity. Are you taking the most of that, and if you get it done the next day or the day after that, it only takes you 48 hours or 72 hours to get that done, you're automatically showing the coaches, hey, I'm on top of what I'm doing on my own end. I want to show you what I can do on the field. It's the guys that will put themselves in that hole, and they might not get cleared till the day of a tryout. That's automatically assigned to a college coach. Is this kid really made of the right stuff in between the ears that he's prepared to be a part of a Division I program in the walk-on process? So that's kind of the first sign and evaluation step for a walk-on. If we know nothing about you, if you just show up on the doorstep and go, hey, I want to try out. So that being said, I've seen it done successfully at the top end and the mid-major level. So it's something that can be done. So it's definitely not out of the question.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds not too dissimilar to the how we started with like how to get evaluated and get noticed. Like starts all over. If that's something you want to do, you kind of got to get that attention in a positive way. And, sounds pretty similar. It's just a little different because you're already there.
Yeah. It's similar as far as we're going to pay attention to the small things about the walk-ons and see how they act in that short little time frame, because we're only going to have, I think it's 3 practices is the allowance of how long the walk-on period is. It might be different per school, but we have a shortened time frame to now make a decision on the walk-ons. Is he on the field with our guys before practice, or is he just showing up as we're getting ready to stretch? Is he asking us questions after practice? Putting yourself out there. You probably don't want to be the first guy in line in the drill, because you want to see what we're doing. Probably take the lead as one of the freshmen on the as they do, let the older guys lead. But we want to see you in the mix during these drills that happen during practice.
Yeah.
So it's all things we notice in the walk-on process.
It's funny as we kind of talk, and we have one question left, but it sounds like and nothing again that I haven't heard for over the years, but I think for anybody listening, something to take note of is it's not always the on the field stuff necessarily that might get your guys' attention. It's a lot of the little things that are done, outside the lines, or even in the kids with the trash. Like maybe it's on the field, but it's not playing lacrosse. Like some of the little things you do can put you in your best possible position to get the attention of a college coach that you may not have otherwise done.
Yeah, I mean, something I'll add about the little things. It's something that I believe in. Is that when you are in college and you are wearing your college around campus, you're wearing your college T-shirt that says men's lacrosse on it, you're representing something that's bigger than you. The program will go on with or without you. So your decisions while you're a part of the program represent a whole larger than the current 2019, 2020 men's lacrosse program. You're representing everything that happened before you and everything that's going to happen after you in regards to the whole program. So the little things go a long way as you represent that kind of idea.
That's perfect. So to kind of wrap it up, we've talked about a lot. We talked about the little things, some of the big things, but what do you, in your opinion, is the number one thing a recruit can do or a player can do to make themselves the most recruitable player possible?
I would say the number one thing that a recruitable player can do is their ability to create a relationship with the coaches in the places that they want to go. Having those interactions on the phone, that it's a good back and forth. We know who you are. We know about your family. I know what sports teams you like. You know what sports teams I like. You tell me about what you did over Labor Day or how your Christmas break was. Those relationships and building those make players more recruitable. If I hang up the phone and I go, that was a good conversation. That kid's awesome. He now moves a little bit higher on the board as far as, I really want that kid. I'd have a hard time having that kid not be in our program, regardless of an even playing field of talent. So if you have two even players as far as talent goes, the one that creates a better relationship is probably going to get that kind of nod in that situation.
Yeah. And I have to believe it's like there was a number of coaches I've heard talk over the summer and talk about, I think we talked about a little bit about finding the right fit. You guys want to know that someone wants to be at Wagner, not that a kid just wants to play D1. Like he wants to be at your school. Like I'm sure you guys hate it when a kid comes to campus and just doesn't enjoy himself and ends up transferring out. Like you guys want the players that want to be there. So that creating that relationship to know that the kid, like, hey, this kid, he's as interested in us as we are of him. Like that's the perfect match, and that's going to get the best out of your guys' program. As when you get a bunch of players all rowing in that same direction, they all want to wear that Wagner on the front of their jersey. Yeah,
absolutely. It's all about finding, we do want to find that talent on the field, but it's finding the like-minded individuals that we can build relationships with, and they understand us, is going to take us as programs to where we want to go. And you can find a like-minded individual that can create a relationship in New Jersey, in Long Island. You can find them in Kansas City. You can find them in Minnesota. You can find them in California. It's all about how well can you build that relationship to make yourself the most recruitable player to stand out among the rest.
Yeah, and most adults will know this, but for any of the high school kids listening, that's really not going to be any different than when you're hunting for a job leader. Either creating those relationships, so you can get an early start on that, and life will be maybe a little bit easier if you learn it now than when you're out in the job market. Relationships do count for quite a lot.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, when you get into the job market and the job hunt, your resume is just black and white ink. It's a piece of paper. It doesn't speak to who you are as a person and the characteristics that you bring to the table. When you get those job interviews, it's that meeting, that first interaction. How well does that go? How well do you portray yourself? Goes further in that next step of getting to the next round of interviews and landing that job outside of what's on the piece of paper. So it's about taking what's on the paper and making that jump off. Makes people more recruitable, whether it's to jobs, to schools, or even finding that future wife. So it all comes together in how well can you create relationships.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good life lesson. I didn't know we were going to get into that, but that's actually it's well, we always say all the time, like, sports is the metaphor for life, and I mean, I think that's kind of perfect explanation as to why. Like, it's really one of those things. I mean, for even people who aren't getting recruited, or maybe not even want to be recruited, but like, these are still lessons you can learn, playing high school lacrosse and just kind of building those relationships and then moving on. Because I mean, if you're moving on to college anywhere, I mean, it is a little bit of a sales pitch. You're selling yourself, and you have to convince people, like, why should you want to be here? I mean, that's what college essays are all about. Like, convincing the colleges, like, why should we pick you over someone else? I mean, it really kind of hammers that home.
Yeah, I mean, the one big piece of advice that I like to always share, and I tweeted about it right before September 1st, is college. It's not a 4-year decision. It's a 40-year decision upon graduating high school. The right fit for a potential student athlete is going to set themselves up for that success they want in college on the lacrosse field. But where are you going to go after that? Are you going to be able to get that next job and get that, buy your first car and do all those things that you want to do and have goals for and have aspirations for? Your college is going to set you up for those next steps. So it's their first big life decision. It's an exciting one. It's one to take some pride in, and I enjoy helping young student athletes throughout this process as much as I can.
Yeah.
Well, Coach, before I let you go, like, if people want to get more information on the Wagner program, maybe they want to follow you on Twitter, like, where can people kind of find you and the program online?
We are on Instagram at Wagner MLax. On Twitter, it's at Wagner Lacrosse. And then I myself is on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Zolchonock, ZOLCHONOCK. I know it's a mouthful. I tell my guys to call me Coach Z. So thank you, Dad, for a long last name. We make it work.
Yeah, I guess you guys you probably sat in the last seat in class, I'm guessing, in high school quite a bit.
I was in college. I was supposed to be the last kid who graduated at Kane University. I was the last guy in line. I had enough of it. I cut like 4 people because I couldn't be the last one in my last guy in line. So my mom got a good laugh out of that. She's like, how'd they go from ZA to ZO real quick? And I was like, I make things happen.
Yeah. So taking those life lessons and learning, like, waiting to be last is not going to get you very far. But
yeah.
All right, Coach, and I will have links to all the things that you mentioned in the show notes, as well as online at laxrecords.com. Coach, I cannot thank you enough for being on today. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate being here and getting a chance to chat with you and sharing some knowledge and some content.